And in turn, it also depends on how you keep your poi and how you make it. So they have mikini ai or machine poi, and they have traditional way of making poi, which is with a pohaku kuiai and a papa kuiai, which is a poi making stone and a board. The traditional way, you are actually treating the microbes different than if you were to make it with a machine. So when you make mikini ai, most factories that you'll see will actually leave the koena, or what we call the sugary outer layer, or some people call it a cortex, ilikana, there's different names, but there's also different layers to that too. But that sugary outer edge, you'll see is usually a darker color. You'll usually see it as like a red or a purple color, and the inside will be white usually, or gray. But traditionally Hawaiians, what they would do when they went on voyages is they would scrape off all that outer layer, because the sugars would make it ferment faster, and sometimes it's too fast for the voyage, so it doesn't stay as long. It doesn't ferment at a good pace. Therefore, it makes it harder for you to voyage. So by making the poi correctly is where you're truly gonna get the real beneficial microbes, and as well as making the poi last. So you huki the kalo, right? So some varieties will take 16 months, let's say 16 months, 12 months to get your kalo plant out, right? The way the kalo grows is it grows upward out of the ground, not down. So as it grows up, the plant will come big, and then eventually when it's getting time to harvest, the plant will start to shrink and get smaller. And people get confused. They go, "Oh, I gotta throw fertilizer or not." No, that means you're getting closer to harvesting. But anyways, after you harvest the kalo, you are going to huli the kalo. So on the kalo, there's a ring where the corm and the upper stalk meet. That is called the kohina. You want to cut underneath it to preserve the plant so you can replant it, and that corm is what you eat. So the corm there, so what you do is you were to cook it, either steam it. People nowadays like to pressure cook, it's a lot faster. Traditionally you'd put in the imu, but no matter what way, the better way to do it is with the skin on. I've seen people take off the skin, but you can, if you try to make poi with it, it becomes loli or lumpy. And so you want to keep the skin on, and you cook it, let's say in a pressure cooker, you put it in for 45 minutes, an hour, then you take it out. Then it becomes soft, kind of like if you were to eat potatoes in a stew, how it's soft, you can bite through it. It's almost like that, but a little bit more ulika or gummy compared to the potatoes. It has more viscosity. So when you have that, you clean off the skin. When you're ready to make poi, you clean off the skin. Then the next step, you scrape or you ihi. So the first, here, let me go back. The first removing of the skin, they call that pohole or ho'opohole. Means to emerge or to make it emerge. So you're emerging the kalo out of the skin, basically. And then you ihi, which is the scrape. You're scraping off the ilikana, which is the overly moist parts, and the koena, the sweeter parts of the kalo. You scrape that off, because in the traditional recipe, you don't want the extra sugars, and because that will make your poi ferment too fast. So after you scrape that off, you have this kalo corm that's nice and white or nice and gray, depending on the variety. But you have this kalo corm, and then you use that, you put it on the board, and that's what you kui into making your paia, and then you're going to take that paia and make it into poi. Traditionally, you'd put it in the bowl, you'd hold paia with your hands, or some people do it on their boards nowadays. But after you make the poi in your bowl, then starts the fermentation process. So how I was saying earlier, from the wa'okua, has all the microbes that come down in the stream, goes into the lo'i. It actually lives outside of the skin of the kalo. And then after you cook it, the bad microbes die off, but the good microbes are still alive in the high heat. They learn to adapt to that high heat, but they're still on there. And then after you scrape off the skin and you remove the sugary bits and you make it into poi, the microbes actually go into the kalo, so that when you make it into poi, the microbes are still in the poi. To make poi, the natural microbes that came from the lo'is and the malas will actually be inside the kalo already, inside the poi when you make your poi. And that's when you let it sit. You sit it on the side for a couple of days, even longer, depending on your preference nowadays. And you let it poha or rise. And what that is, that's the fermentation process. That's when those microbes will eat up the sugars and whatnot that was in the starch. So when you first make your kalo, when you kui'ai, you're actually breaking the cells and the molecular structure of the kalo form. And that's why it becomes this gelatinous poi substance. And this child was okay. This child was not stillborn like the brother of Halo. And Halo would take care of his older brother, the Halo plant, the Kalo plant. And by doing so, there became this relationship on how Native Hawaiians would take care of the aina, and the aina would provide for us. Because Haloa would take care of his older brother, Haloa Nakalau Kikli. And Haloa, the Kalo plant, would feed the younger brother. So they would take care of each other. So that's why they have the term Eola ke Kalo, Eola ke Kanaka. If Kalo lives, us as people live on. So that's kind of the mo'olelo behind the story of how Kalo and Hawaiians came to be. That is part of the Hawaiian mythology of the story of Kalo. And that is an important story because that is the baseline on how we should be treating each other and how we treat the aina that we stay at. So we take care of the aina will take care of us. We hanai them, they hanai us back.
Say it again, what is the name of that store?
Kako'oiwi, Kako'oiwi.
And where is it in Kaneohe?
They're right along He'ia Bay.
Okay.
Yeah.